This week on the Orange Box Podcast, we talk about our highlights from both Summer Games Fest and the Xbox Showcase, some leaks potentially equal to the infamous NVIDIA Leak, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 36. I am your host, the man who, when wearing red in public and saying, "Oh yeah," is often mistaken for the Kool-Aid Man, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man whose life runs at 60 frames per second while his animations are only 15 frames per second, Justin, better known as I'm Zaracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
Well, it's I picked off from where I was last week, and I learned over the weekend, as I mentioned, in case anyone didn't see last week's episode, I had an issue where I accidentally messed up my operating system, and I had to completely reflash my OS onto my computer. I realized this weekend as I was going to, at least I thought the issue was with the secondary drive where I have my games. I thought that was the issue. It turns out that it actually was with my main drive, with my boot drive. So I had to end up postponing reinstalling the OS just because of the fact that even though I backed up what I thought was important on my secondary drive, my boot drive still had some files on there that I wanted to keep. So I had to go on Amazon and order a M.2 NVMe to USB adapter. Had to wait for that to come in so that way I could transfer the files over and back those up. And then I could go ahead and reinstall my operating system. So I did that, and it took a while to get things set up, and also just like to fix a few other things, but for the most part, things seem to be more or less how I had things beforehand. Just have to like still set some stuff, but yeah, it definitely was an ordeal. And today, like I thought last week, also the storm was the issue for not having good mobile service for my phone. It could be something else entirely, because today I still had an issue, and so I wasn't able to send any messages. Like also trying to message you, but I couldn't message you, saying I was gonna be late getting home.
Gotcha.
Because of that. So I'm still gonna be looking into seeing like what's the issue with that, because that really shouldn't be happening for no apparent reason. So I'll look into that. But other than those two things, things have been pretty much more or less the same for me.
So no tornadoes or anything this time around?
No. In fact, it was relatively clear today too, which is very strange.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't tell you what the problem is with your cell phone. I know when I had issues with mine, it was mostly because at the time I was still using my Alaska cell provider, which most of the time was fine, but occasionally would have issues with connectivity. But that was also, coming from Alaska to Missouri, you probably have been with the same cell phone provider this whole time, so who knows. But anyway, as far as my week, it's been pretty good. Trying to think of what all's happened. It's just been kind of all over the place. I ended up deciding to basically take some time off from putting out videos for a bit. I just was feeling a little overwhelmed with the amount of work that I needed to do and the amount of time I had to do it. So I decided that instead I would just take June off, basically. I mean, like I put out... I did complete the review that I had said I would do for that game card reader, because I told it already took me quite a while to put it out because I think they sent it to me in either March or April, and I only got it open like the beginning of May, so it took me a while to even get to it in the first place. And I told them that I would do the review, and they asked, last time I talked to them, I think last week or something, they asked, you know, that I could ask me to try to get the review out within the next month. And so I just figured, okay, if I'm going to be taking time off, I might as well just get this over with. I've been putting it off. I already had some footage recorded. It was just a matter of writing out the script and then recording that part and then getting it put together. It definitely didn't take super long to put together, but yeah. So I'm taking a break from both my cooking channel and from my main game channel otherwise. And I'm going to use the time that I have to basically start recording stuff ahead, because the biggest issue I have with doing those OLED comparisons is just the amount of time it takes. Because it's one thing doing like a commentary video where I can do it in 1 or 2 takes, and I don't even, most of the time I do it unscripted, so it's like I just record it, and if necessary I make a couple of changes, might have to add some clips in, whatnot. You know, I'm not doing anything as fancy as like, oh no, it's Alex, where his is like super high production and all that. From that standpoint, but then when I'm doing these OLED comparisons, it takes quite a bit longer because, for one, I have to have a quiet enough environment to do the recording for both the Switch and the Steam Deck. Depending on how long it takes to get through the recording, it may not be something I can do in a single sitting, because usually the time I have is when my kids are in bed, and that gives me a maximum of 2 hours to do the recording. And sometimes it takes at least an hour to do the recording, plus any initial setup and that sort of thing. And then it's just like, I don't have enough time to do both in the same night. So it takes a while to get through that. And then on top of that, there's the editing, which, because of the fact that I decided to try to get things more in sync as much as possible, that takes a lot more time than it did before. And then, of course, there's also any additional editing I have to do with the audio, which now, because I'm doing it all after the kids are in bed, it's not nearly as much as it was before, but it still can take quite a bit of time, depending on whether, like, the dog and or the cats are making noises in the background, or just you hear the jingling of their collars or whatever, and it's just random stuff I have to take care of off and on. So, anyway, I got stuff recorded for the Diablo 3 comparison, even though I know it's probably not going to do very well view-wise. I already said I was going to do it, so I'm just going to get it done. And I'm going to, probably this weekend, start working on the other recordings. I mean, Sifu, Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance comes out this week, so I'll probably, I don't know if I'll actually get to the recording of that right away, but I definitely will be doing that, as well as others. And if I can get that recording done, that's the big issue, because that's the one thing that I can only do a certain time of day, whereas doing the editing, I can work on it a little bit throughout the week. That's not really a big deal. It's just a matter of I have to have the stuff recorded before I can put together the video. And then the cooking stuff, I haven't really had much chance to record stuff lately, because it's just, things have been such a mess, and even though I've had a number of recipes that I definitely want to put up, there's just, like, I haven't really been able to have the necessary environment to do the recording, or the time in most cases. But on the positive side of things with that, I tested out a couple recipes this week, which I didn't record anything for them, but I made my own beef pastrami, and I also made some pork loin pastrami, which, as far as I can tell, I've not seen anyone do a pork loin pastrami before. I looked it up, and the closest thing I could find was like a pork shoulder pastrami, which would, of course, be delicious. But the pork loin, I think probably people don't do it because typically pastrami, like any other brisket cooking, takes a long time to cook. Pork loin doesn't take as long, and so it's just kind of like, okay, how would you do the pork loin versus the beef, the brisket? Because the brisket takes a long time, pork loin doesn't, apart from the initial brining process. But anyway, so I did those, and I mean, because it takes like 7 to 10 days of brining time before you smoke them, and like then the brisket takes around 15-16 hours at least for a flat, which is the thinnest part of the brisket. And then the pork loin I think took about 3-4 hours maybe total, something like that. It wasn't very long. But yeah, they both came out amazing. They were so good, so good. So I'm definitely going to be doing both of those in the future, especially the pork loin one, because that one is more unique. Like, I grew up with turkey pastrami, so I always liked that growing up, and I had never made beef pastrami before until now. And of course, I'd never made pork loin pastrami either, but I made both, and they both turned out amazing, and I'll definitely be putting up recipes for those in the future. So... otherwise, something else that was fun. I can't remember if I told you that we had ordered this, but there's this, when people cook pizzas in like a pizza oven, they do it like super hot, super fast. You end up with that like nice crispy on the outside, soft on the inside crust. It's like super, super good. Well, we had ordered this thing called it's kind of like a pizza stone, except that it's made of cast iron. And then it also comes with the peel, which is like the thing where you scoop up the pizza and or slide it onto the stone in the oven. So I had ordered it a while back to be like an anniversary thing. And it came like, I think a week after that. I got a chance to try it out a couple weeks ago, but I made the mistake of assembling the pizza on the peel, and so then didn't slide off the peel properly, so the pizza just like bunched up when I tried putting it in the oven, and the toppings went everywhere, and it was just a complete mess. It was good, but it was a mess. And so this last week I followed a different strategy, assembled the pizza on the cutting board, made sure I put down plenty of cornmeal on both the cutting board and on the pizza peel so that I could slide it off more easily. Was able to successfully do it with 2 pizzas, and it came out amazing. It's like, oh man, I'm never gonna make pizza a different way ever again, because it's so good. Because it's like, usually with our crust we'll do 375 for around 15 minutes, and I mean the crust tastes great, but like the bottom tends to be a little soggy sometimes because we like having more sauce on our stuff, and of course we put a lot of toppings typically. But if you get it cooked well enough on the bottom to where it gets nice and crispy like that, you don't have that problem. And getting that crispiness on the outside but still being like really soft and perfect on the inside, and it was just like, it was so good. I'm completely sold on it, to where I actually am less tempted to buy pizza from the store, or buy pizza from a restaurant anymore. Which is saying something, because it's been a while. I mean, like, I've liked our crust for a long time, and I like our homemade pizza a lot. It's just, it's time and effort, and sometimes I'm just not like motivated. Like, at the end of the week, I don't want to do anything. I just want to grab a pizza, super easy. I know there's going to be plenty of leftovers, no effort whatsoever. But this is just like, you get that pizza restaurant quality crust, and then on top of that, all the, like fresher ingredients and homemade stuff, and it's just great. Oh, and one last thing I did do over the weekend that I hadn't done up to this point was I made my own pickled jalapenos. And, I mean, it's very, very easy to make. It's just I never tried doing it before, because pickled jalapenos aren't expensive. You can, they're super cheap. So you can get like a big, huge jar from like Sam's Club for $5-6. I mean, it's very cheap, but I had still wanted to make my own because I've never really been that satisfied with the spice level that you typically get in those. And if you get like some good fresh jalapenos that actually have a decent amount of heat for jalapenos, you can make some really good pickled jalapenos, and they came out great. So.
And I guess does I don't know if this is technically a correct term, but does aging the jalapenos during the pickle process affect the spiciness?
I've never tried that. It potentially could, but I just know that I think a lot of it has to do with just the heat level of the jalapenos in general. You know, whether they get ones that are more spicy or not. And it seems to be kind of a gamble in general. Like, the one thing that I have found is that usually if I get fresh ones from like Walmart, they're almost always pretty spicy. Whereas other times I've gotten fresh ones like coworkers that have grown their own. You know, I put a whole one of those in a breakfast burrito, and it doesn't faze me at all. Like it doesn't even really register when it comes to heat. And so it's just kind of like, okay, well, like, it's cool, but it kind of pointless. These actually have a decent amount of heat. I mean, it's not like actually hot, but for jalapenos, they're on the hotter side, and they're just really good. So, but yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. I feel like there's something I'm forgetting about, but it probably wasn't all that important other than talking about video games, which we'll do. So, what have you been playing this past week, sir?
Well, a lot of my gaming stuff has been on my deck since my computer was MIA, but I played some more Halls of Torment, and I really got into it because my friend who originally got me the game, he's jumped back into playing it some, and he's been blowing through the achievements for the game, so I thought maybe I should go back and play it some more. And then I also remembered that there was a new character that I had unlocked that I never played before, and so I decided to try this character out. I can't really say I care for the character too much, just because the character essentially has a rifle and tosses grenades. Now, the rifle, I feel like, doesn't deal as much damage as it could deal, and I feel like it should also possibly have a higher critical chance rate that it does. But the biggest gripe I have is just the grenades seem to be random. It doesn't seem like you could actually aim where you want the grenades to land like you could aim where you want to fire the rifle. So, I don't know, maybe if I play the character some more, I can maybe get used to it like I have with other characters, but this one in particular just doesn't seem to be that interesting to play as. I mean, some of the bonus weapons that you can, or sub weapons you can unlock, those seem pretty good, like the Morning Star that I've unlocked so far. That seems to be pretty good to use, so I'll probably try to continue just to play as the character so I can unlock more sub weapons, but just like as the base character itself, I'm not too fond of that character. But still, it was good to go back and just try to clear out some of the challenges in the game. I also started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelist. And I forget what like the subtitle for that is, but it's definitely something that is, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's just Yu-Gi-Oh! I never really played much of the game. Like, I never really played much of the actual card game. I only played I guess the closest thing to video games I was playing was Duel Links, the mobile game, like probably about 3 or 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then at some point I said, I'll get Legacy of the Duelist, since that pretty much is a standard full game as opposed to Legacy, right, or the Duel Links mobile version, which is pretty much a watered down version. Right. So not really too much to say about it. I mean, I've been going through the story mode, and when I have the chance, I use my own deck, because the character decks, which are based off of the decks that characters use in the show, mm-hmm, I think they kind of suck sometimes, just because, I mean, granted, I think if you're handed a deck that you don't know the cards for, and right, they don't necessarily match your strategy, you won't do as well with playing with that as if you made your own deck. So that's one reason why, but I just think a lot of the cards really aren't that great for what I want to do. So I definitely bring in my own custom deck, because I do a whole lot better when I do it that way. But that's what I've been doing there. And lastly, I played Toy Story 2 for, well, the N64, but played it through Project 64. And the reason I did is because my niece and nephew, they've been watching the Toy Story films almost religiously lately. And over the past weekend, my niece said to me, she said, well, she was talking more so about Toy Story. And I said, you know what? I'm going to show you something that I had when I was really little. And I said, this is a game that I played, Toy Story 2. All right, this was my first games that I ever owned. And yeah, she was she had fun. It felt great, sort of going back to that nostalgia of playing this as a kid. And yeah, I mean, it's not an extraordinary game, but it just means so much to me personally, especially since I loved watching Toy Story as a kid. That I just had fun. And of course, I mean, I pretty much know the earlier levels, so I know them like the back of my hand, so I can just like go around, know where I need to go and what I need to do to get all the I guess essentially collectibles for each level. But yeah, that was definitely fun.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I definitely have some comments about those games. First of all, just because we just looked at it, or rather I just looked at it since I just played the footage. I never played any of the Toy Story games, even though watching that one, I'm like, I want to play that. That looks fun. Because it's like, I love those types of, platformers from N64 and all that. And it's like, I look at that and I'm like, I wouldn't mind playing that one. That looks fun. Then Yu-Gi-Oh! So I remember when Yu-Gi-Oh! Became like a thing in the US. And I mean, I was in high school at the time. But I was obsessed with Yu-Gi-Oh! And that was something that I would like. It was between that and Magic the Gathering that I would be playing during like lunch breaks in high school. And yeah, I was just like, I completely was obsessed with that. I still have a bunch of cards from both Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic. I haven't played in a long time, but I do have cards. And I have that Yu-Gi-Oh! Game that you played as well. The only thing I don't like about that one really is, obviously it's just because the difference in, all the additional stuff they've added since I was a kid, since I was, in high school, how much more complicated the rules and everything have gotten. And particularly, like, you look at a card and it literally has like 1,000 words, it looks like, on a single card explaining how this card works. I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is insane. Why do you have to make it so complicated? I mean, like, it was so good before, and I mean, I still liked what I played. I didn't get super far in it. The one really frustrating thing is that one didn't have cloud saves. So like, I had been playing it on my original Switch, and because I have the physical version, and I played a good chunk of the way through the campaign. At least got through all of like the very first part of the campaign, through all of the initial through Duelist Kingdom. And I played a little bit past that. And then when I got my I think it was just when I got my V2 Switch. I didn't even try doing it with my OLED. Of course, I couldn't transfer my save, and so I pretty much I think I just went ahead and I started in basically the second game, the second campaign, because of the fact that I hadn't played as much of that. But of course, then I got my Switch OLED, and I haven't touched the game since. I wouldn't mind jumping into that sometime. It's just a matter of being willing to take the time to get into it, and I think that might be a good game to play, like when I'm just kind of in the middle of not really knowing what to play. Maybe just like reinvesting in that, because it is fun and I do like it. I haven't touched it in several years, but yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, and I also agree with you about being overly complicated, as far as even going as far as the text, because I've seen actual Yu-Gi-Oh cards where there's so much text and the font is so small that I feel like you need to have a well-lit room or be using a magnifying glass just so you can read what the card does.
Exactly.
And it's just insane.
Yeah, it's way too complicated. But I'm talking about it though. I actually kind of want to play it again. I might have to look and see if I can find it on a Steam sale, because like if I'm gonna have to restart the game, I would probably rather just see if I can do it a different way. Well, it might be possible to transfer the save a different way. I need to just look into it, because like I know with Dark Souls there wasn't cloud saves, but there was a way to transfer the save over, which is what I had to do going from my V2 up to my OLED. So I'm just gonna have to look into it, see if anything got changed, because if it has any way that I can get my old save transferred, I would really like to do that, because I just don't want to start all the way over again if I don't have to.
Do you think you could transfer it via your computer, like copy the file over to
maybe
then transfer it to your Switch?
I don't know. I just have to look into it, see what the options are, because I would definitely be interested in doing that. But once again, it's one of those things where it's like I just have to have the time to actually play. You know, I would actually almost honestly be willing to do that as a mobile game. Just put it on my phone. Because then it would be easier to just like, okay, I can play a quick match here and there when I'm taking a break at work, rather than having to, you know, pull out my Switch or my Steam Deck. That being said, as far as what I've been playing this week, so one of the first things is there's a game that I saw. It was just like a video on like some different indie games. I can't remember what the exact topic of the video was, but it was just some different like simple indie games that sounded interesting, various ones. But the one that I decided to check out is a little game called Rain on Your Parade. So in this game, you play as a cloud, and it's basically kind of like along the vein of Untitled Goose Game and stuff, where you have various objectives related to being a cloud. Like you start off, the only ability you have is just doing rain, and like first level you get you're raining on someone's wedding day. You're getting the bride and groom wet, and then you have additional objectives of getting all of the humans wet, and I can't remember what other objectives there were, but each level has like additional objectives, some of which are hidden. And it's just kind of like a ridiculous sort of game. I don't think it's not quite as addictive as Untitled Goose Game, but it still was pretty fun. And there's like some levels that are themed off of Metal Gear Solid, which is kind of funny. And you even get a Metal Gear or like a Snake style bandana, which is what I have in the footage that I have playing here. But yeah, I didn't play a ton of it. I played probably like maybe 2 hours at the most. I didn't get super far, but just felt like checking it out. So, and it was, you know, another one I got on like Instant Gaming for $1.74 or something cheap like that. So it was very, very low cost of entry. But then I did play some more Destiny 2. I finally finished up the first full legendary campaign mission, which was a bit longer than I was thinking it would be, but it still wasn't like too terribly long. I definitely had a few spots where I really struggled a bit, particularly the very last mission, until I figured out a good spot where I could kind of camp to deal with the enemies more easily, because everybody hits hard. You don't have any radar, and it's just you don't have any, like when you're in certain parts of the fight, or like once you get past a certain point in the fight, you can't respawn at all during the fight. So if you die, you start the whole encounter over again. But anyway, so it's good stuff. I didn't play much more. I didn't really play any more than that, mostly just because I was focused on other stuff. I don't have any footage of it, but I did play some more of the Lego games with my boys, as well as some more Mario Party Superstars. And as always, that's a good time. It's just fun having something I can do with my boys like that. But I do want to note real quickly that the footage I have here of Destiny 2 that's currently playing, it's literally just right before I go into the final encounter, because I'm just waiting for like my super to charge up, and so I'm just doing emotes while looking at the boss, waiting for the encounter to start. But anyway, as I mentioned before, I did record my Steam Deck gameplay for Diablo 3. So I got that taken care of last night. And yeah, not much to say about it. It's kind of awkward to control, just because the fact that you don't have it's mostly the movement, because of the fact that you can't use a joystick to move. You're basically just using the touchpad like it's a mouse. And so like if you click on an empty space without an enemy, then it will move you in that direction. If you click on an enemy, if you put your mouse over an enemy, if you have a long range attack, it will attack whatever enemy you have your mouse over. If it's a short range attack, you'll go up to the enemy and attack them. And so like it's nice being able to target enemies more easily when you're doing long range stuff. But when you're so used to being able to move around with a joystick, it threw me off a lot. I did set it up so that like additional attacks, which would normally be assigned to, I think, usually like number keys or whatever, I have them assigned to the keyboard equivalent of the buttons. So A, B, X, and Y, for example, L and R, that sort of thing. So that way I was able to at least, I'd be able, if I saw the key on screen, I know exactly which button it corresponds to on the Steam Deck. But yeah, it's as far as like visuals and performance, I thought initially that it maintained 90 frames per second. It really doesn't once you get more stuff happening on screen. But it does maintain 60 really well, even with max settings. So I think the lowest I ever saw it dip down was maybe like 52, 53, and that was very rare. It's pretty much, even when there was a lot going on screen, then it would typically stay at 60. So it was good. But the game I played most of all, to no one's surprise, was Ghost of Tsushima. And I am going to rescind my dissuasion from last week of not playing on the Steam Deck and say playing on the Steam Deck is just fine. There's still a couple spots here and there where performance will dip, especially like when you're going in one of those fields that has a lot of the I don't think they're flowers, whatever, the white puffy grass, whatever it is. Those spots, definitely the performance would be the frame rate would drop a little bit at times, but I ended up turning off dynamic resolution and just using FSR 3, which actually worked better than I was thinking it would, mostly because FSR 2 is so terrible. But it's probably just because this game's nowhere near as demanding as as Horizon Forbidden West. So yeah, but I played a bunch of it. I did finish up the Iki Island stuff, including that boss that was a pain in my butt initially. Basically, I watched a video that kind of showed like her different attacks so that I could better prepare myself mentally, knowing how to handle the different things that she does. And once I figured that out, that made a big difference. Additionally, that armor I talked about last week that you could get where you lose your parry, but if you get a perfect parry or a perfect dodge, the perfect parry makes it so that you have, it starts off with, I think, just one counter or two counter attacks after the perfect parry. So you normally get one as it is, or you get the perfect parry and you have time to do one. And then with the set of armor, by default, you get two. So you get the one that you normally get plus one extra. And as you upgrade it, you get additional. So you get up to 3 counter attacks on top of the normal one. So it's like basically 3 free attacks, which is really, really freaking nice if you can get it fully upgraded. I didn't have it fully upgraded by the time I was going into the fight. I think I just had it like to level 2 out of 4, or maybe 3 out of 4 at best. But it did end up working out to where I was able to figure out the timing well enough to where I could do perfect parries enough to actually be able to counter a lot more of her attacks, which made it a lot easier. And the nice thing about it is that when you do that perfect parry and then the 2 counter attacks, it completely whittles down her like stamina bar or whatever it is. So then you also get a few free heavy attacks as well on top of that. So it made it definitely easier. It still took me several tries to get through the first half of the fight. But the nice thing is once you get through the first half of the fight, there's like some cutscenes, and then you go into the second half of the fight, and even though it's basically equally as difficult, if you die during that second half, you just go back to the checkpoint at for the second half, so you don't have to redo the entire fight, which is super helpful. It's like when I died during that second half, and then it just took me back to the beginning of the second half. I was like, okay, I can do this. I got this. I mean, it still took me a few tries, but I wasn't like stressed out anymore because I saw that it's like, okay, I could get through the first half. I know I can get through the second half, especially because the second half, she's really basically doing all the same attacks. I don't think there was really anything different. And yeah, so that set of armor, especially once you get it fully upgraded, is actually really great, especially dealing with like the boss type enemies. Like there's, between like the ones that you do regarding the various legendary things, whether it's earning a certain armor set or a special skill or like a weapon, like the longbow, for example. Those types of fights, it's super helpful to have that additional thing. And once you learn perfect dodge too, the perfect dodge, if you execute it while wearing that armor, it will disorient any enemies that are close by. So if you have a bunch of enemies close by, it disorients everyone around you. And then you can if you do the heavy attack, it does a spin attack that hits everybody. So like the spin attack you get with the fourth stance, it's basically that, except that it's it's an automatic thing, or well, it's not automatic, but it's easier to accomplish because you don't have to like charge it up or anything. You just, the second you complete your perfect dodge, you can do that spin attack. So I really like this armor. Apart from the fact that it has monkeys on it. But I was able to, there's one custom version of it that doesn't have just monkeys on it. So, that doesn't really have the monkeys visible. So I can live with it, and I've been just rocking that most of the time since. But yeah, I played quite a bit on the Steam Deck and on my desktop, and it's just been a really great time. I freaking love this game. I forgot how much. I knew I loved it because I, played it in 2020 when it came out, and I loved it then. But I just forgot how much I loved it until now. And after doing the Iki Island stuff, and then going back into the main campaign, and I don't find myself in any way struggling with the enemies anymore. Not that I don't die. I still die sometimes, and I still make mistakes, but I don't feel like I'm struggling in the way that I ever did when I originally played through on PS4. Even playing on hard difficulty. So I'm just I'm loving it. I'm sticking with it. We'll see what happens when it comes to the doing the Legends mode. Because like I really want to do it. I have to find people to play with. I don't know if you can do it with just like basically computer companions, or if it's doable all solo, or how all of that works. But I'll definitely look into it and see what I can figure out. I probably won't do it though until after I complete the campaign, because I feel like it'll just kind of take away from it because of the fact that it is different. So, but yeah, I think that's probably it, and that's definitely all I've been playing. I didn't play any Paper Mario this week. Like I thought about playing some on Saturday, but because of other stuff I had to do, and then playing games with the kids and everything, it just didn't end up happening. So,
okay. So where are you? I guess are you still in the second act for the main campaign? Or are you okay?
Yeah, I haven't even touched any of the main quests in the second act yet. I've just done some of the the character loyalty quest things. I've done. I think I just did one for Sensei Ishikawa, or as I prefer to think of him as, Dr. Pierre Chang from Lost. Then I did a couple for Norio. And otherwise, it's just basically been wandering around, doing any side stuff I come across. I think I got all the side stuff done in the lower area. I mean, in the first section, minus some of the collectibles. But I didn't find all of those. And there's like a few things on Iki Island that I couldn't do because I didn't have the armor set I needed in order to complete some of them, because you have to do like certain. It's like you have a riddle to solve that, and each one requires wearing a certain type of armor. But if you don't have that armor set yet, then you can't do it. So there's just some I hadn't earned yet.
Okay, that's interesting. I guess then it's because of the abilities that each armor has.
Well, yes and no, but I mean all these different special shrines are all basically cosmetic armors themed on PlayStation titles. So like there was the Horizon one, there's a God of War one, there's a Bloodborne one, there's Shadow of the Colossus. I think that's all of them. There might be something else I can't remember. But yeah. I'm actually surprised there isn't an inFAMOUS one. That's kind of shocking to me.
Yeah.
But it might, I don't know. Anyway, I can't remember if there's anything else with that. Yeah.
One more question I also had was, for Diablo, did you happen to see if there were any community?
Yeah,
layouts?
there's nothing. Nothing actually for Diablo, and it's because it's not through Steam, and so you have to do it through BattleNet.
Right.
And they've only put Diablo 4 on Steam.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, I would love it if down the line Microsoft decided to go add button controls to Diablo 3, because the button controls on the Switch and on other consoles work perfectly for that game. But for some reason, they just never added it to the PC version. And 2 and 4 both have button controls. And one, at least the one has button controls technically too, because it was on PS1. They did a port on PS1 with button controls, of course. And then it also has fan-done ports for 3DS and Vita. So, yeah.
That's very weird.
Yeah. It is what it is. I mean, like, I think I would definitely pretty much tell people that if they want to play it on Steam Deck, it is definitely playable. And 3 is not a hard game. I mean, it's definitely the easiest of the Diablo games by far. Um, but I would pretty much say, unless you're playing exclusively in handheld, maybe even if you're playing exclusively in handheld, never docking it to a monitor, I would still recommend like docking it in some way, or at the very least like using a wireless mouse to where you could use a mouse, because having mouse and keyboard for that would make it much easier to play than having to use the Steam Deck buttons and the touchpad. But I mean, if it was as hard as Diablo 2, then I would have a much harder time recommending playing it there. But it's not. So all right, any other thoughts before we get into news?
No, sir.
All right, so we just had last week, I mean, between Friday and Sunday, we're going to completely ignore the Ubisoft Forward, whatever it's called, because there's nothing there. But the Summer Games Fest on Friday, and then we had the Xbox Showcase on Sunday. And there was a bunch of announcements. And I know that between the two of us, we have quite a few games that we can talk about. And many of those games are going to be things where we actually share the title. And so it's definitely going to be a situation where I will say, that it makes the most sense for us to just, we will... let me try saying that again. So we'll go ahead and we'll talk about our individual things. We'll do one at a time. So you go first, I'll go second, and so on. And that way we can, because there will be some common, we'll have some things in common for that. So why don't you go ahead and start us off with one of the games that stood out to you at either Summer Games Fest or the Showcase?
Alright, so the first game that I saw, which was a pleasant surprise, we had talked about this before, but when seeing that was actually confirmed and knowing exactly what was happening, that was very good to see, and it looks good, is LEGO Horizon Adventures. That just looks so much fun, and like I said before, there was the rumor going around about the LEGO and Horizon having some sort of collaboration. We weren't certain if that was going to be another or a new LEGO set, or if that was going to be a full-on game. But now we see that yes, it is an actual game, and this is a complete collaboration between Sony and LEGO, as far as with the development teams. But a crazier thing is that this is also not only coming to PlayStation and PC, but it's coming to the Switch, which is just wow. Wow, you know what? Now Nintendo's getting that full slate as well. That was very surprising to see. It is odd though that it's not coming to Xbox, which I don't know why.
But is it odd? Is it though?
Well, good point. That is true. But but I think still though, it just looks like it's a fun game. It looks like it's a LEGO game, but it's still something that is very interesting. And even if you're someone who might not necessarily have enjoyed the Horizon games, it still is a fun looking game that you could still go in and have a good time playing this game. So I'm really looking forward to it. I don't recall seeing a release date for the game. I could be wrong. They could have said something, but I don't remember seeing a release date. But I'm definitely looking forward to it. That's definitely gonna be a game that I am getting. I might not get it at launch, but it is a game that I definitely would be getting.
Yeah, that one looks very cool. It's funny because basically you have Aloy, who in the LEGO games, with the exception of maybe some fanboy perspective, is considered a bland and boring character just she's not likable. There's just, it's like, what makes the Horizon games good is not Aloy as a character, it's the gameplay, pure and simple. And like I love the gameplay, especially in Forbidden West. I think it's fantastic. But Aloy as a character has not kept me interested in the game. It's just the gameplay itself. And it looks like, obviously it's very simplified for the Lego game, but it still looks like it at least maintains some of the type of things that you get in Horizon, which I think is very neat. You have a technically more likable version of Aloy here, which is just kind of funny. But the interesting thing about this is that, beyond the fact that, of course, this is, kind of an example of, I mean, I recognize Sony's not considering this a tentpole game because of the fact that it's not their, like, actual main game. Instead, it's, collaboration. But the fact that it is day and date on PC and that it's coming to the Switch. And obviously the reason it's coming to the Switch is because they don't see Nintendo as a competitor. Of course, Lego games sell incredibly well on the Switch, and Sony knows they're going to make a ton of money on it. It's kind of funny, though. I heard some PlayStation fanboys were theorizing, who were upset about this, were theorizing that the only reason it's coming to the Switch was because Lego insisted that it comes to the Switch, and that's the only reason why it's not an exclusive to PlayStation 5. But then, of course, it's not on Xbox, which shows that no, this was Sony's decision. Because this is the first Lego game, as far as my understanding goes, that hasn't been on Xbox in a really long time.
Yeah.
So it is just it's interesting. I think it looks like fun. Like maybe not a day one purchase. I mean, honestly, we'll see when it comes out specifically, whether or not I change my tune on that. But like for me, the big thing is that, apart from the fact, well, it may end up being day one just so I can do the comparisons. That would be the one reason to do day one for that. But since I do have a bunch of Lego games already to play with my kids, I'm less inclined to get this day one unless it just comes out at just the right time when, like theoretically I've finished all the Lego games with them, which I don't necessarily see happening, but it's certainly possible. But yeah, it's interesting because like I can tell that it is the same person doing the voice. Pretty sure it's Ashley Birch, and she does Aloy, and like she's a very good voice actress. Like she does a good job. It's just that Aloy as a character is just not interesting, and she's not likable. I mean, she's not like insufferable like Mary Jane, but she's not like someone where you actually care about her unless you're a fanboy, for the most part. Most people I know, even big PlayStation fans, don't really like Aloy as a character. They just like the games themselves. And of course, the fact that they look so good. That's really what it comes down to. But yeah, I don't know if I really have anything else to say about it. I think it's very cool that this is coming. I'm glad that the rumor was true and that it ended up being something like this. I don't know why Sony would think for a second that someone's going to go out and purchase a PlayStation 5 to play the actual games based on Legos. Usually it's the other way around. If people are familiar with the original property, that they're more interested in playing the Lego versions, but whatever. I don't think I really have anything else to say on that front. Lighting is bad in here. Here, I'll pull up that. There we go. There's some extra lighting. All right, so in terms of one of the games that stood out to me, and I'm going to be going kind of all over the place, mostly because I know that we have several games in common. But I'm going to cover some of the ones that you didn't have on your list. One of those, this is going to be blatantly obvious, but Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. So, of course, we already knew this was coming, and this is the first time we actually got to see more than just screenshots of gameplay, or, just like some brief little tiny clips. They did quite a bit of extended sequences. I believe I'll have to pay attention again, but I think everything they showed is all just from the initial prologue, the Virtuous Mission. I don't think there's anything beyond that, but actually, nope, I'm wrong. I am wrong about that. There are some things from later in the game. Not very many, but there are a few. Some things that I noticed, though, I mean, apart from the fact that obviously the game looks incredible. I mean, it is Unreal Engine 5 and all that. I noticed that in terms of the gameplay, they definitely added some mechanics that were not present in the original version of the game, particularly the fact that you can walk and crouch, which currently the only way to do that on Metal Gear Solid 3 is with the 3DS version, because all the other versions do not have that ability. Additionally, there's also like some stuff related to the some mechanics that I believe may not. I can't remember if they were in Metal Gear Solid 5, which you would think I would remember that since I just played it, but we're definitely not in the original game. One of those being like just being able to aim while on your, like laying on your back and aiming. I can't remember if that was in 5 or not. It definitely was in Metal Gear Solid 4. But either way, I mean, it's just like, it's welcome additional mechanics that were big improvements over the previous games. And I mean, even if they kept everything the same controller-wise, which I'm glad they're not, but even if they did, I would still be excited about this because I love it. Oh, something that they didn't show specifically in the trailer, but they showed in a separate interview thing talking about the game, is that this game is going to have both the classic the classic overhead control scheme. I mean, like you could have it just like it is in the original version of Metal Gear Solid 3 before they did the subsistence version, where it's third-person camera, or where you have the independent third-person camera. So you'll be able to play either way, which I think is fantastic. I actually would like to try playing that other way, because I've only really ever played it with the subsistence type camera of the third-person full camera control, which, I mean, to me, that was one of the things that made me so excited when I first started playing 3, was just because I felt like that made the game that much better. But I wouldn't mind checking out the other way of playing as well, even if it would probably just be on a second playthrough rather than the initial one. Breathe a little bit of extra life into it. But yeah, I'm super excited about this one. Of course, we have no idea when it's actually coming, even though it might be coming this year. There was like a, I think it was maybe GameStop or something, that they had the special edition pre-order, and that they had actually put up the release date on it as being, I believe, November 17th, but then they pulled down that date almost immediately, so that may not have been the actual thing. Either that, or they just weren't allowed to actually put it out. But if that game's coming this year, it's probably going to be a day one for me. I'm just wondering, with it being Unreal Engine 5, how it's going to run, because Unreal 5 is notorious for being extremely demanding. Yeah.
Well, I mean, how was your performance with Final Fantasy VII Remake? Because that was Unreal Engine 5, right?
No, that was Unreal 4.
Okay. Okay. Never mind then.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, maybe it'll come out this year. I mean, it seems like a lot of work has already gone into the game. So I mean, granted, I don't know if they've specifically said how development has been going, but I would guess because they announced this. What, they announced Delta a couple years ago?
That was last year.
Oh, last year. Wow. All right, so never mind. Then I'll say maybe it could be later this year, but I don't think it'll be any later than 2025. Like
Right.
I think by summer it'll be here. But yeah, it definitely looks like they've done a whole lot to the game, to the fact that, you know, this isn't just a fancy remaster. This is like a full-on built from the ground up remake. So they've definitely done a whole lot of work here. And I when I saw it, I thought about you, and I said, I know you're gonna be pre-ordering this game as soon as it's available, going to Green Man Gaming or
Right.
or somewhere else to get that discount.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and the collector's edition looks really cool, but of course it's only for consoles. And
Right.
I mean, realistically, I'm actually kind of glad it is, because for one, of course, pre-orders sold out very, very fast with that, but also because of the fact that I don't really need any of that stuff as much as I like it. I wouldn't have a place to like put the statue or what's the word? It's like a scene from the Virtuous Mission diorama. Yeah, it's like basically a 3D diorama. That's pretty cool. But yeah, I wouldn't have any place to put it, so from that standpoint, I'm glad that it's not available. Plus, also then I'm also not dropping $200 on the game. I'll just buy it once and I'll be good. All right, what's the next game you want to talk about?
Next game was also from the Games Fest, and this was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Rita's Rewind. I've enjoyed watching Power Rangers. I haven't watched it a whole lot, especially like depending on which series it was, but I did enjoy watching it. And watching this game reminded me of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game that came out a couple years ago, Shredder's Revenge, where it's just a classic beat 'em up game, but just with the characters you know, and just something you can play with by yourself or with friends, and just a really fun experience. Like, this game reminded me so much of Shredder's Revenge, so I was like, this looks great. And I was surprised. At first I thought this was from the same developers who made Shredder's Revenge, but I saw it's actually a completely different team. But it still looks great. It still looks fun. You know, it's gonna be I'm definitely going to enjoy going in there, and I don't think I saw it in the trailer. I really hope they add Tommy in, because Tommy is...
Oh, he'll be
awesome.
in. There's no way that they can leave him out. They have to have him in.
Yeah. But I'm just like looking forward to playing this game, and, you know, playing as the characters, fighting all the villains that enjoyed seeing on TV, and just like, I'm also very curious. I mean, well, we did see some of that, but just, you know, going through the regular boss fights and then even going through the Megazord fights, and it definitely seems like a more polished version or better version of the Power Rangers game that was on the SNES and I think the Genesis. Like, there was a beat 'em up one there, but it just seems like a much better HD style of game that really also just improved the quality of that type of game, and I'm just like, I'm all for it. So I'm very excited for this game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so Power Rangers started when I was a kid. Like, I would have been 5, I believe, when it started. No, 6. Somewhere 5 or 6, one of the two. So yeah, it started when I was a kid, and I loved Power Rangers growing up. There was actually the only time I was ever on TV. They went into one of the local TV stations went into a local Toys R Us and they asked kids if they liked Power Rangers or Ninja Turtles better. And of course, at the time, I was like, Power Rangers, of course. Now I would definitely say Ninja Turtles, but Power Rangers still has a ton of nostalgia for me. And of course, going, based on the old school, like early Power Rangers, and I mean, like what they show is also going into when they get like the actually, now that I think about it, maybe, yeah, they only have the original Zords. They don't have any of the ones from beyond the beginning, but I could definitely see them potentially adding DLC for the later ones, as long as they can ignore Turbo. That can just die in a fire, because that was the dumbest one that I despised. Like, I loved through Zeo, and then once they got into Turbo, and it's like their Zords were literally just cars. It's just, you lost me. But yeah, it's on my wish list, of course, on Steam. I'm sure it'll get a physical version on Switch down the line, and I'll be a sucker and buy it twice just because I want the physical version. But like that, of course, to be expected. It would be surprising if it didn't. The game runs like butter, from the trailer. It looks fantastic from that standpoint, and yeah, I'm excited about it. Looks very cool. Now, in terms of another game that I was looking at that isn't one that was common between us, this one's going to be a little more controversial, I guess. And that is South of Midnight, which I've also seen someone call, very humorously, BayouNetta. I thought that was a perfect title for it. So the game runs at 60 frames per second, at least in the trailer. It's, the trailer, the gameplay they showed, the main game itself runs at 60 frames per second, but the animations for the characters are done like in a stop motion style, where it's like more like 15 frames per second, just for the animations for the characters. Like the characters, the villains, all that, but like everything around is running at 60. It's weird, and they've done this as an optional thing that you can do in the Miles Morales game, because it was taking off of the Into the Spider-Verse, which is that same stop motion style animation, and it I think for the cutscenes, I'm not bothered by it. I actually think it's fine. I understand it's an artistic choice in this case. It really is. It's intended to look like the stop motion stuff. I don't like it in combat, even though it is still completely workable, because of the fact that while your animations are that lower, that stop motion kind of thing, the responsiveness is still there. The 60 frames per second responsiveness. So, but the gameplay itself reminded me a lot of inFAMOUS, and so I guess you could even call it like a Cajun version of, well, I guess, inFAMOUS 2 actually is set in an equivalent to New Orleans. So it's already got that type of flavor to it from that standpoint. But yeah, I don't know. I think the game looks like it could be pretty fun. It's one of several games that has a queen as its protagonist. So I'm not going to use the title that the Drexel would use, because that's going too far. He can get away with that. I definitely would not use that term. I would not. I don't believe it either. But I thought it was funny that they had at least 2 or 3 games in the showcase that were starring a particular type of character. But really like the gameplay itself looks fun. I think that I love the art style, and even though I know Sweet Baby is involved, and that's part of the reason why you have the characters you do. I mean, the character also makes sense in the setting. I mean, the New Orleans type of setting, that's very common for the culture and everything else. So, like, I'm not bothered by that. And I really think the game looks fun. So, I'm interested in it. Not necessarily a day one purchase for me, but it's kind of like, okay, Forspoken had kind of a similar vibe in terms of the gameplay itself, but it had a really obnoxious main character. And this time it seems to have a character who doesn't seem to be obnoxious. Looks like the gameplay will be pretty fun, even though that stop motion thing is a little jarring, to say the least. But I don't know. That's about all I have to say. Now, you can go ahead and roast me as much as you want, but I stand by my opinion on this.
No. I think that's fine. I mean, I think that even with the game running at 60 FPS, I don't know. I don't think I would really. I think that just looking at it, I think that possibly even playing it would feel a little weirder to me, just because of the fact that characters running at 15 frames per second. I mean, I never watched the Spider-Verse films.
Because you hate Miles Morales.
I saw some clips.
Because you're racist.
Yes, if for the people who are only listening to the audio and not seeing the actual video, yes, I actually am a white man. But I did see some clips of the Spider-Verse, and at first I thought that I thought it was something with the clips. I had seen that there was a problem with them. That's why they weren't running so smoothly. And then I later learned that actually is just the style that was going for it. And I don't have a problem with stop motion films, and I mean, I've even done some stop motion stuff a long time ago, but seeing like fully 3D rendered images just feels a little bit odd to me. Like it feels kind of uncanny just because of the fact that with, if you're doing something like claymation or something like that, there are actual real objects that are being manipulated and used there, so you can kind of relate to that. But if it's a computer generated image that is moving in an uncanny way, that just seems kind of odd to me. So I mean, I think playing that would feel really weird, and I couldn't really get used to that. But yeah, I mean, at least it's running at 60 FPS. That is a good thing there.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is that I really, if I have the option to turn off the stop motion thing for the game itself, I would do that. Absolutely, 100%. Because like when I tried it out on Miles Morales, I thought it was a fun little gimmick for a few seconds, and then I was just like, no, I'm just gonna go back to the normal way of playing because it's better that way. Yeah, so I'm hoping that they will make it an optional thing. I don't mind if they keep it if you're forced to do it in the cutscenes, which of course, if I have the option to turn it off altogether, I would just turn it off altogether. If they only gave me the option to turn it off for the gameplay and everything and not the cutscenes, I'd be okay with that. But I definitely would prefer just having 60 plus across the board. Without question, I just think that would be much, much better. But if I had to deal with it, I probably could. I would imagine, though, that even if they don't officially do it, modders will do it. And that's one of the great things about PC gaming. That's something that I would definitely take advantage of. Part of the reason why it probably wouldn't be a day one purchase for me. But, I'll definitely wait and see, like, if they have day one the ability to turn off that type of animation, then I would be more inclined to buy it closer to day one, barring unless I have like a bunch of other stuff that I'm just working on at the time. But if they don't have the option, then I'll just wait till modders fix that. All right, any other thoughts on that one before you get into your next game?
No, sir.
All right.
So, Next game I want to talk about, I don't think this one's going to be in your list, but this is just something I thought was interesting and caught my attention, and that is Mecha Break. Now, apparently this game actually was announced sometime last year, but I only learned about it during this past weekend. So this is a mech style of game, you know, thinking of games like, well, maybe not necessarily Armored Core, but maybe something more arcade-ish, like Zone of the Ender. Well, maybe that's not really arcade-ish either, but something like Zone of the Enders. And this just looks very good. I mean, I don't necessarily flock toward maybe not every mecha game that I see, but for certain ones that just really click in my head, this one seems to click and seems to be maybe somewhat reminiscent of Daemon X Machina, like just this style of gameplay. And even though I thought that Daemon X Machina was too short, and I felt like the story was just pretty much just generic anime weeb stuff.
Yeah.
The gameplay though was still pretty solid, and I enjoyed it. And this game seems to retain that solid feel. So I am very interested in it. I don't think it'll be something I get day one, just because I'm not that interested in it to just get it. But it's something I will keep my eye on and maybe get on a good sale like down the road.
So, actually, when I looked at this initially, I thought, man, this looks amazing. I'm a huge Gundam Wing fan from back in the day, and I've always dug the mecha thing. And, like, I was super excited about Daemon X Machina back in the day, but then, or back, when that originally was announced for Switch. And then, when I played the demo, I did not like it because I felt like the weapons had no impact to them and just felt like I was firing a pea shooter. Like it just didn't feel very good to me from that standpoint. And so I never ended up actually really playing the full game. I didn't give it a chance after that demo. But this one, I was looking at it and I was thinking, man, this looks like what I wanted Daemon X Machina to be. And then I found out it was a battle royale, and it's like, nope, you lost me.
Oh wait, oh gosh, I missed that part. Oh god.
Yeah, 60-player battle royale. So yeah, completely lost me. Now, if it was possible to play entirely against the computer, I'd be all for it. But yeah, if battle royale, no, I'm not gonna play that. I don't want to play that kind of game.
Yeah. I now I'm in the same boat as you, where I'm just defecting, and it's a real shame too, because I mean, granted, we're getting a fix via Gundam Breaker 4, but like the last two Gundam games, which I really was interested in getting, those were both battle royales, and or at least like live service Gundam games. I thought that's horrible. I really want to just play a single player Gundam game on PC, because the last ones, or at least the last good ones, were only on like PlayStation 3, I think. And so it was disappointing, and it's like, can we get a nice good mech and a mech game? And Daemon X Machina, I was hoping it would be it, and like it was good, but it still was lacking. And I'm hoping that the sequel, which they teased a couple weeks ago, but that was really just a 15-second CGI teaser. I'm hoping that one really improves over the first game. Yeah, well, I guess I'm crossing that off my list now. But thank you for letting me know now.
Yeah, definitely better to find out now than after you spend the money, even though of course probably if you had spent the money, you would have, once you realized it, you could have just refunded it. But yeah, either way. All right, well, next game I want to talk about is another one that was not on your list, but is on mine, and it's more kind of a tentative thing where I'm not entirely sure about it yet, but it also interested me just enough to where I'm at least going to keep an eye on it, and that's Fable. So, one of the things that I do want to point out about this, and maybe I'm completely wrong, maybe it's just different camera angles, something else, but I remember one of the biggest issues that most people had with the original Fable reveal trailer was the fact that the female main character, who's based off of a real life model, and actually the real life model is gorgeous, but they made her way less attractive. Like she just, they messed up her teeth and they messed up her face a bit. And maybe I'm wrong on this. I could be totally wrong. Maybe, I mean, I haven't checked out comparisons to see if there's any real difference, but to me it seems like they made her look better since that original trailer. Like they actually made her look much closer to the original model instead of looking, you know, less so. But it could also just be the angles made her look I made her look a little better, and the fact that they didn't show her teeth at all. I couldn't tell you, but either way, in terms of the game itself, it still just has me curious. Like, I'm willing to maybe give this game a chance. I need to see some real gameplay, like get a legitimate idea of what this game is actually going to be like. But it at least intrigued me enough to where I'm willing to not just completely write it off. But that's about all I have to say about it.
Okay, and I actually do agree. I do think that they touched up the character because she does look better. In fact, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think they also added in the real models or freckles into the second version, because I don't think she had any freckles or at least the character had any freckles in the first trailer for the game, but you can definitely see them here. But I do think she does overall look better. I think that I feel like the first trailer kind of muddied things a bit, where I don't know if I can fully trust the game. But,
right.
I mean, which is kind of sad because I remember the very first teaser they had for this Fable game, and I thought, wow, I'm really interested in trying this out. Like, I mean, like, I don't know what's going to come out, but I'm very curious. I want to play this game. And then, they released the last trailer, and I was like, I don't know about that one, Chief.
Yeah.
But, I mean, maybe it'll be better, but I feel like I would have to wait until the game comes out and hear what people who've played the game say before I could feel like I would put some money on this, just because
right.
I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know how they're gonna handle it, but I can understand why you're cautiously optimistic about it.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, having Richard Ayoade on there, it's just like he's fantastic. I love that guy. He cracks me up, especially in IT crowd, but just in general, he's hilarious. I mean, he wasn't in this trailer. He was in the last trailer that they did. He was the giant, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, cautiously optimistic. It's not going to be a day one purchase for me regardless, unless I get like high praise from people I trust. I'm not going to take seriously what the rage bait YouTubers say, because as far as I'm concerned, you know, they take issue with just about everything, especially knowing that there's involvement from Sweet Baby. And like, I definitely understand being very unwilling to check things out because Sweet Baby's involved, but the games can still be good even with that. And it can still be worthwhile. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to trust them, and I'm willing to, you know, be very careful, but I still think that there's the potential that things like this could be good. So we'll just wait and see what happens. I'll need to see some real gameplay after the game releases, and then once I see some gameplay and get a good idea of whether or not this is something that I'm actually interested in, then I'll find out. Now, if I find out that it has some like ridiculous story elements that just basically make me not even want to touch this game with a 10-foot pole, then of course I'll just ignore it completely. But anyway, um, any further thoughts on this, or are you ready for your next game?
No. I think I'm good.
All right.
So I think I'm gonna follow your example, and here's a game that I am I'm cautiously optimistic about. And this is actually a game that I really was interested in playing, but watching the trailer kind of gave me cause to pause for a moment, and that is Perfect Dark. Now, I did not, grow up playing Perfect Dark on the N64. Like, I bought it way after that game already came out. Like, we're talking about like already in the Wii era. That's when I first played the game.
Mm-hmm.
But I did pick it up from a retro game store. I played it, and I enjoyed what I had played of it. Never played Zero just because I never had an Xbox, but still in the same vein as Rareware games from the N64, like GoldenEye 007, stuff like that. And so when I saw that a new Perfect Dark game was being made, I thought, I'm very interested in this. I would like to try this out. The trailer, they had some of the gadgets I thought were interesting, like being able to copy the voices of people around you to either lure them to other places or to open up doors. But the gunplay really seems kind of too different from the older games. Like, even looking at, I just even see like how it looked, just to make sure that something major hadn't changed between games. I looked at the gameplay footage for Perfect Dark Zero, and that seemed pretty much more in line with the original Perfect Dark game, which I thought was good. I enjoyed that. This one, the gameplay, the gunplay seems quite different, especially, I mean, I guess that's certain also if it's the combination of the trailer also using hand-to-hand combat as well, but it just seemed different. It seemed off to me. So I'm not certain if it's really the game that I want, just because it seems a little too different to me in that regards. I mean, I have seen people also talk about how main character also looks completely different from her original versions, which I can agree with that. And I don't know if that's because of the fact that they're changing the style or the art style from going from a stylistic choice to a more realistic choice, which, I mean, I feel like if that's the case, they should have just kept the original, stylistic designed, just because not everything needs to be done in a realistic, lifelike design. So I can agree with that there, but the biggest turnoff to me was just sort of like the gameplay itself. I mean, as far as with the combat. So I'll look and see if things change in future trailers, but just as of right now, I'm not as enthusiastic as I once was, and it really just makes me want to know when Agent 64 comes out, because that actually is in the vein of the older Rareware first-person shooters. But yeah, that's all I have to say there.
All right. So I'm definitely mixed on this one. Now, I have not played the original Perfect Dark, at least not more than like, I booted it up on my N64 maybe 10 plus years ago, and I couldn't figure out where to go, so I didn't play anything beyond that. I still would like to play the original, and I know that there's that PC port that we actually talked about a while ago. I really would like to track that down and give the game a shot. It's definitely kind of like one of those things where I feel like it has the potential to be really good, but I just honestly have no real idea. I like the idea of having more than one way to approach any given situation, because they have said that you can, do it the slower intelligence gathering kind of steady method that they do in the game, or you could go in guns blazing. And I guess that was, a factor in the original game as well. But obviously, if you go in guns blazing, you'll miss some stuff and all that. Initially when I saw the parkour elements, I was like, oh, this gives Mirror's Edge vibes, and I love Mirror's Edge. But it was kind of like very bare bones from that standpoint. She didn't do any wall running, which I just thought, oh, I can think of so many times when I've accidentally not done a wall run when I meant to, and that sort of thing. And so, like, I wonder, okay, is that because of a skill issue, or is it because she doesn't have the ability to wall run, or she just doesn't have it yet? But anyway, I'm cautiously, like, I'm willing to give this game a chance, but I have to see more to know for sure. Because, like, especially the parkour stuff really just had me more interested, because I love Mirror's Edge so much because of just how good the parkour felt when you could get a good flow going. And the combat is just it's hard to tell, but I think that it has the real potential to be a really good game. Character design aside, which, it's obvious what the influence was for that. But, I'm not going to write off a game just because of that. I need to, get more information. I need to see more and figure out whether or not it's something that I'm actually interested in. It's definitely nothing where I'm at a point of thinking this is a day one purchase. It's more like, okay, if it ends up being good, I will pick it up at some point. But I really need to, get like some good... I need to get some good feedback from people who I trust their opinion. I would definitely like to find out how it compares to the original, especially once I actually get a chance to play the original. And just go from there. So that's all I have to say on that front. All right. Well, another thing that was on my list that stuck out to me was the DLC for Alan Wake 2, which, of course, I still haven't played Alan Wake 2, obviously, because it's Epic Games exclusive, and there's no indication yet of it leaving Epic Games, which is really unfortunate. But the DLC just looked cool because, of course, for one, they're doing something with their Night Springs things, which is basically the equivalent of the Twilight Zone for their universe. And they had that for the original Alan Wake as well. But, of course, what I like about this, apart from just the interestingness of the settings there, is also that they brought in the protagonists from both Quantum Break, which I have yet to play, and Control for 2 of the 3 episodes. Rather, one character per episode, and one of them is with the character from Quantum Break, one is from the character from Control. And of course, Control was a fantastic game, and I liked Alan Wake as well, so it is, down the line, something that I hope I'll be able to play, assuming it actually comes to Steam eventually. Which, of course, they announced physical versions coming, but there's nothing about it coming over to Steam, and I guess we'll just have to wait and see how long it takes. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like, considering the fact that they were nearly adamant about a physical version not coming, and now it's coming, I want to believe that they would give a Steam version, but I feel like that's more so in the hands of Epic. Mm-hmm. And what they would allow rather than what the devs would want, which in that case, who knows? I'm hoping that within a year they'll say, you know what, we've lost out on a lot of money, let's swallow our pride and just release it on Steam. Mm-hmm. Because the game has not sold to our expectations, and we're appealing to the console gamers who did not buy the game because they couldn't get a physical version. Now we should appeal to the PC gamers who would not buy the game because it was on our store only. So I'm hoping they do it. One thing that was weird to me though is the fact that the Xbox version, the physical version, does not have all the content on disc, but the PS5 version does, which is, I don't know why that is. I feel like
I think it's because the PS5 has like ultra capacity Blu-rays that hold up to 100 gigabytes per disc, and the Xbox does not.
Okay, well that would make sense then, because I was just thinking to myself why, and it's really, I mean, it really sucks considering the fact that this is coming via a limited run game, so you really want to have everything completely on disc, but in this case you can't, which is sad, especially if you're someone who's trying to like collect games, and especially if you're trying to like preserve the games that you have, not being able to do that is, it's a bit of a shame, but it's great though that it is finally getting a physical version for people who do want it.
Yeah. Oh, just as a a quick side note, so of course Kingdom Hearts is coming to Steam tomorrow as of the time of this recording. Still no price.
Yep.
Which means they're probably charging a lot for it, and that's annoying. But I guess we'll find out tomorrow. I think it becomes available at noon your time, I believe, is when it's available to get. So we'll see what the price is. I don't know. Anyway, going back to the showcase stuff, why don't you go ahead and give me your next game?
Alright, so this one I feel very confident is on both of our lists. That is going to be Doom: The Dark Ages.
Yes, sir.
This just looks fun. I mean, just from the start of the trailer, just seeing Doom Guy, the nice good cloak, and then just running out there, slaying demons, getting his skull gun. I mean, like, it just looked really fun, and I mean, it's very interesting seeing how id Software with these past three games just take. I mean, granted, the soft reboots have been building upon and evolving what the original games did, but with each version going from Doom 2016 to Doom Eternal, where Doom Eternal had more focus on, or not more focus, but it included the elements of platforming, and also including the style of gameplay where certain guns will be effective on certain enemies, so you can't just use the same gun willy-nilly around all these boss fights, all these enemy fights. Seeing now this game having different elements, and now having that shield and just having that boomerang effect, it's just like, it's very cool seeing how they always seem to just twist things and make it look a little more different, and I like that. It looks really fun. The one thing that I don't know, I feel like they kind of went a little bit too far, was just the having the giant mecha. I don't know. Personally, it just feels kind of out of place for a Doom game. Granted, I mean, I'm not saying that Doom Guy wouldn't just. I mean, he got a laser and fired a hole into the center of Mars, but I mean, this one just seems kind of weird. But overall, though, it does seem really, really fun. And I've heard a couple people post online saying like, it would be really cool, because I think this is supposed to take place before 2016. It would be cool if this game ends with him right before he's locked into the sarcophagus.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, it looks fun. Yeah, I'm interested. I'm very interested in this. I'm granted I still need to finish 2016 and start Eternal, but in the meantime, I can still look at this and say this looks good.
Well, it doesn't come out till next year, so you still got time, and they're not long games. I mean, obviously, if you do it 100%, then it can take a bit longer, but it's still not that long. But yeah, so I am 100% on board with everything. I don't care if it jumps the shark with the mech and everything. I mean, the reality is that if this is supposed to be during the Dark Ages, I mean, I don't know when exactly the Dark Ages are in terms of time, whether that's like actually in the times of knights or whatever, or if that's just the way it happens to look. But like, I'm on board with absolutely everything. The chainsaw shield and the gun that shoots ground up enemy skulls, and the mech so that you can fight the Titan 1v1, and then the dragon thing that you can like breathe fire into the Titan's mouth. And I love absolutely everything about this, and I'm super excited about it, and I'm super excited that it's not coming until next year, because that gives me time to actually finish replaying 2016 and then replay Eternal and play all the DLC. So I'm super happy about this. This was easily one of my 2 games of the show, of both shows combined. I absolutely love these Doom reboot games. They're so good. And this one looks like, I wasn't sure what they were going to do, because I knew they had to do another Doom game at some point because of how great the other 2 were, but I had no idea what they were going to do. And this is everything I didn't even know I wanted, and I'm so excited about it. So yeah, that's what I got to say on that. All right, well, the next thing I'm gonna bring up is one that I wasn't on your list, and this one's not like as high up on the excite meter necessarily for me, but it was one that I looked at and I thought, okay, this looks pretty cool. And that is Hyperlight Breaker. Now, I never played Hyperlight Drifter, and I know that this is in the same universe, whether it's a sequel or just connected in some other way, but I think it looks fantastic. I always enjoy a good 3D game. I'm a sucker for a good 3D world, especially when it's, taking a 2D game and transitioning into 3D, and it does have co-op on the campaign, which is cool. But yeah, I just think it's a game that looks neat. Now, I probably should play Drifter before I play Breaker. And then I would assume Drifter is not a very long game, but I haven't played it, so I don't know. Either way, I think it looks cool.
Yeah, I mean, I remember wanting, I can't remember if I played Drifter a long time ago on a friend's, like, Switch or not, but the gameplay definitely, from what I recall, was definitely fun, and having a 3D version of that, I can definitely imagine how hectic or how fast-paced, or how I guess the difference from playing a 2D game to a 3D game. I can imagine how that can feel, and it definitely looks like it could be very good. That being said, I probably wouldn't get it just yet, just because of the fact that I don't think I have that in my library, so I would want to play Drifter first before I would play Breaker, but yeah, that definitely seems like a solid game.
Yeah, for sure. And sorry about the thing. I was bringing up the 2 games on my on Steam, and of course auto-played the trailer, so I'll just edit out the audio for that when it comes to that. But yeah, I think it looks cool, and I've always heard Hyperlight Drifter was really good, so I'll definitely check it out when I can find a good sale on it. I can just check Instant Gaming, but I'm sure I'm gonna see if there's a physical version for Switch, because if there is, it's less a question of whether there is a physical version. It's more a question of whether or not the physical version is affordable. because
that's
if
a
it was a
better
limited
question.
run thing, then it's probably going to be super expensive. At least that's what I would assume. So, yeah, so far I don't see any listing for the physical version, just the digital. So, I'll look around and see what I can find. I mean, they have the special edition for $100, but and that does include a bunch of stuff. But I don't want that. I just want a standard version. That's all I want. So anyway, oh, speaking of which, that reminds me. They had a sale on Borderlands 3 for Switch, so I went ahead and I grabbed that. It was only $20, so good price for that. And that way, I mean, I already got it on Steam for like $8 a while back. I think through like a Green Man Gaming sale or something. So I'll be able to do comparison with that as well eventually. Even though the Borderlands games haven't gotten a whole lot of views, I would think 3 would probably do better because it's such a recent game. So anyway, but yeah. So your next game.
So my next game is going to be Expedition 33. Now, when I first saw this trailer, I wasn't certain exactly what type of game it was. I wasn't certain how it was, because at first I thought it was an action game, but then I realized, no, wait, this is actually turn-based.
Yeah.
And it gave me kind of Legend of Dragoon vibes, just because of the QTE that seems to enhance your attacks and abilities, which I thought, I think the original Legend of Dragoon, it kind of made things gimmicky, especially once you played enough fights, but I think that a modern game can sort of refresh things and make things more interesting, and especially if you're going to be playing through a long campaign. But sure, we've had turn-based RPGs, within the past years or so. We've had, of course, Persona, we've had the later Yakuza games, we've had Baldur's Gate, but I really wanted something that's sort of, at least in my opinion, going back to that medieval fantasy setting from the original Final Fantasy games. And while, yes, you get that with Baldur's Gate, but I want something where it's just like your entire party's lined up and you're, just like having your battles, not necessarily having to strategize all across a map about how you're going to do your fights. So something like this, I really was interested in, and it just seems interesting. Like, the story, I don't know too much based on what the trailer, but it seemed interesting enough that I'm willing to give it a go. So I am interested in this game. I'll look and see more when it comes out. But yeah, I don't really have too much to say about this.
Well, this one was actually one of my 2 games of the show. It really shocked me because when I first saw it, like, I was looking at it thinking, okay, the art style looks like it's probably gonna be a Souls-like kind of thing. And we've had just like a flood of Souls-likes lately. It's just been overwhelming to where I know I'm not gonna play pretty much any of them. But when I saw the combat, the fact that it was turn-based with some of those action elements, counters and whatnot, I was sold. It's like it gave me vibes of, like, it's a cross between a Souls-like, Persona, and some other stuff. Mostly like the fluidity of the turn-based combat reminded me a lot of Persona, or at least with Persona 5 and Persona 3 Reload, just very fluid turn-based combat, and of course visually it's a beautiful looking game. Actually has attractive female protagonists, surprisingly. Not that really matters that much to me, but it's still just like, okay, it's a nice touch. But really, it's more than anything. It's that combat that had me sold. and so I'm super duper interested in this. I have no idea what the story's about. I'm not even sure if they said anything story-wise or not. Because honestly, I wasn't paying attention. Like, I think at the time I was playing Ghost of Tsushima, and then I just had it off on my other screen. And just, like, when I watched it, it definitely had me interested. But, yeah.
It was very vague. It was like, there's something going on, and we're trying to explore this region. But, like, other than that, it didn't really seem like there was anything concrete about what was going on in the story.
Yeah. Either way, it's definitely got me interested. I didn't catch, separate from the Xbox showcase, whether or not this was also coming to PS5. I know that Doom is coming to PS5 as well, but obviously it's on Xbox and PC. So either way, I mean, it's like, I think the game looks incredible, and I'm really, really interested in it. Not as excited about it as I am with Doom, because I know exactly what to expect with Doom, but at least from what I saw of the combat, I'm pretty much sold on it. So.
Okay, so according to what I see here, it is actually coming to PS5 as well.
Okay, makes sense. So that's good. I mean, I think it's, good that we're gonna see these games on more than just Xbox, because the more non-exclusive games we have, the better they can do. It's better when exclusivity goes the way of the dodo and just completely disappears. Now we just need Nintendo to stop doing exclusives and start putting their games everywhere, and then platform holders will have to compete in more ways than just whether or not they have an exclusive game. But yeah. Anyway. All right. Let's see here. I think actually that was all I had for my games, because Expedition 33 was the last one on my list. So why don't you tell me about this Wu-Chang clan game?
Yeah, so Wu-Chang clan, and I'm gonna be honest, it's probably just because I have this unhealthy desire to play Souls games.
Yeah.
But this one, I mean, of course you could say, well, you've already had this before with oh gosh, what's the other game that it is? But I can't remember what it is. But I thought, well, this one takes place in a Chinese dynasty type of game. It's like, yeah, but you already have that. And I'm just like, well, I mean, it could still be good. It still looks interesting. And I mean, this one does seem to maybe have a little bit more of a, well, not necessarily hack and slash, but maybe something akin to like Ninja Gaiden, where the with a slight more hack and slash than you would have in a typical Souls game, from what I saw in the trailer. So it does make things interesting, again, because I already technically have a lot of Souls and Souls-likes on my plate as it is, and considering the fact that there are several others that were announced this year, and I really can't remember what the other game was. I know there was another Chinese mythology setting Souls like that was announced before that is coming out, so I can't remember what that is, but I'm like, I know that there are a lot of Souls likes that I'm interested in, but I still feel a little bit of attraction to this game just because of the fact that it's a Souls like, and I find it interesting. But yeah, so I probably won't get it day one, most likely will not get it day one, but it'll just be on my radar for the future.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't look like it was a bad game by any stretch. It's just, it's so hard for me to be interested in another Souls game when I have yet to finish a single one. And that's really where I am when it comes to Souls-likes. Now, if I finish Dark Souls at some point, end up loving it, then I may go down the rabbit hole and just get into a bunch of Souls-like games. I mean, that could very well happen It's happened with other genres before. But the problem is that I have to finish one before I can even remotely bring myself to play additional ones. So, like, I can't be excited about another Souls-like when I have yet to finish a single one. That's really all it comes down to for me. But yeah, I don't think I really had any other games. Let me just double check my list. At least in terms of all the stuff I had written down. Yeah, that's really it. Any remaining things that just popped in your head from either of those showcases that you wanted to talk about? You can without the trailer.
No, I don't think anything else really stood out to me that I can recall.
All right. Well, we have just one more topic here, which we don't have a lot of details, but we'll at least cover this a little bit. So there is a new potential source of a bunch of games, a bunch of leaks of games, similar to the NVIDIA leak from EpicDB, Epic Database, and this has, a lot of the names of games here, apart from the ones that are in fact specifically that are actually named, that aren't code names. Games that already exist, that were already released and all that. But there's also a handful of games that all have code names. Now, most of them people haven't really figured out exactly what they are, but there are some in here that people have been able to decipher based on DLC that's attached to those particular ones. So one of those, the name, let me find the name of the game itself on here is, or the code name for it, I believe is Momo, but I could be remembering wrong about that one. Let's see here. Yeah, Momo. Yeah. is looks like it's the Final Fantasy IX remake, which was already in the NVIDIA leak, so we already knew that was probably going to be a thing. The reason why they say Final Fantasy IX remake is what this codename is because of the DLC that's attached to it. One of those DLC things is an early purchase bonus Tetra Master starter pack. And Tetra Master is the name of the card game from Final Fantasy IX. Additionally, there's also another pre-order bonus, Thief's Knives, which would additionally fit with it being Final Fantasy IX, since Zidane is a thief. And then, beyond that, it's kind of hard to tell. But there's definitely other things. Another code name is Square Enix has one called Skobeloff. Has 3 pieces of DLC and a demo, which lines up with Final Fantasy 16 because that also has 3 pieces of DLC from Square Enix and a demo, at least on the PS5. So, it's those among others. There's also a codename Utah that looks like it's for The Last of Us Part 2, which we don't give a crap about. And then a variety of other code names that people have not yet deciphered, at least as far as I can tell. Turok is in there, which is another thing. I'm assuming that is, well, it says it's from Saber Interactive, but considering the fact that it was only created as of May 23rd this year, that it was added in there, it could very well be maybe they're doing some kind of remake, or maybe it's just a new Turok game. Any of those are possible. But your thoughts?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting seeing some of these games pop up. I can't remember which ones.
There's also codename Buttercocka, which no idea what that is, but the comments on this just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's definitely weird with these code names, but I I mean, I do definitely think that Final Fantasy 16 is going to come. Like it, I feel like that's a given, especially considering the fact that Square now says, yeah, we're trying to axe exclusives now, just like get games everywhere. So that one I feel is a given. Final Fantasy 9 remake. It's possible. I don't know if it's something that's I feel like would be done justice. I mean, Final Fantasy 9, after playing Final Fantasy 4, that was the only other Final Fantasy that I felt rivaled and possibly even surpassed for me. Just because I mean, of course, you had 5 and 6 before the PlayStation era, but 9 really recaptured the feel, the lightheartedness, but still like the great. I mean, it still encaptured the Nintendo era of Final Fantasy, and so when I played that, it felt so great, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, that was actually when I got a PS1, like when I was in college. Like that was one of the first. That was the first game that I had with the PS1. And when I played it, I thought, oh my goodness, this is just so good. This is such a great game, and I mean, I really enjoyed it, and so I really don't know if they could really, if they would, in my opinion, properly remake the game, because I don't know if they would keep it turn-based or not. I don't know if they would make it longer than it possibly should be. I don't know if they would try to split it up into parts, sort of like what they're doing with Final Fantasy VII Remake. So I don't know if it's something that I would want to see done as a remake. Do I think it's still going to happen? Possibly. As far as Turok goes, I mean, I partially feel like it could happen, but at the same time, fans have asked for Turok for quite a long while, and I mean, it's even going back as far as before E3, or at least right when E3 was on its deathbed, people were thinking, oh man, Capcom's gonna announce a Turok game coming out this year, and it never happened.
Mm-hmm.
Would they necessarily go and bring back the franchise? I don't know. Especially because of the fact that they're pretty much on a roll with bringing out Resident Evil games.
Mm-hmm.
If they do, it'll be interesting to know if it is going to be something like a remake of the older games, or if it's going to be a completely new entry. That's going to be the interesting thing to see. But considering how their mentality, or I don't want to say a focus, but their current goals with remaking Resident Evil games, I can see them remaking Turok. I can see that happening. So I think it's more of a matter of if Turok actually is, or rather a Turok game is coming out, rather than can it be a remake or a new entry. I think that's going to be the bigger question. But it's definitely interesting to see that we now have sort of a new leaker site, or a new leaker list of games.
Right. Yeah, well, I'm going to say already, Final Fantasy IX, for one, as far as I know from what everybody's been saying, insiders, is that it is just a faithful remake of the original game, that they're not doing anything with it. I don't even think they're changing the battle system. It's probably still turn-based, even though I personally would be totally fine with it being action-based, because, like, Final Fantasy IX, it does have a special place in my heart. I played that game right when it came out. I mean, I rented it. I remember I was at my grandma's, and I spent like 3 days playing through that game, and got all the way to Transkuja, that second to last boss fight, and I could not beat him. before we had to return it and before we had to go home. So I never I'm pretty sure, I could be remembering wrong. I may not have. I mean, I'm pretty sure I had a PS1, and that I was playing on mine, but for some reason, I didn't have my save data to where when I actually got the game myself that I could just continue from where I left off. But I also was like, I didn't play the game quite right. Like, I didn't learn skills fully from the different equipment, which meant that I was just woefully underprepared for those fights. But yeah, I mean, Final Fantasy IX is a fantastic game, and like I'm all for a remake. I think that for people who are hardcore fans, like you, who want it to stay turn-based, I think it should stay turn-based. Even though personally, I would be, like I said, completely fine with an action-based. I don't believe that it's going to be split up into multiple parts. I don't think Nomura has his hands in this one. So you don't have to worry about the addition of making it more convoluted. And Final Fantasy IX is nowhere near as popular as 7, so it's like 7, when they remade it, they decided we're going all in on it. We're going to let Nomura do his thing with the story. And I think 9 is just, while it's beloved, it's not on the same level as 7. So I don't think that there's much of any chance that they would screw that up from that standpoint. Now, of course, I could be proven completely wrong, but yeah, I'm curious about when we'll actually see something for this. My guess at this point would be earliest we would see something is maybe Tokyo Game Show. Potentially Game Awards, but it would not surprise me if we don't see anything till next year. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Turok on the other hand, I've still never played the Turok games. I've always been interested. I've just never played them, and I would really like to get the remasters, because I don't know, something about that era, the N64 era, is just, even when those games haven't aged well in some ways, there's just like, I don't know how to explain it. I even love the fog in the environments. That is something that, to me, just like, it gives me so much nostalgia. It gives me such good feelings, and it's like, it makes me want to play those games. Now, in a modern game, I wouldn't want that. But in an N64 game, it's just like, it just takes me back. And all that good stuff. But anyway, and I think that Turok on the Switch actually has gyro controls too, and runs at 60 and all that. And so one of those that I'll check out eventually. But it's a Saber Interactive, it says, is what's tied to that one, so don't know anything beyond that. But yeah, of course, Final Fantasy 16, I mean, another one where it was, well, that one wasn't in the NVIDIA Leak, but I mean, we already knew this was coming to PC. So the one thing, though, I wonder about is whether that is, it doesn't have an Epic Games logo next to it. So right. That's a good sign. It's a very good sign, because the other ones that were previously Epic Games exclusives have the Epic Games logo next to them. Forspoken, Final Fantasy Origin, that is Stranger of Paradise, Neo: The World Ends With You, Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory, Dragon Quest XI S. So, yeah. We'll see what happens with all of this. Definitely. I want to know more. I mean, it's obviously not as clear as it was with the NVIDIA leak, so it's not quite on the same level, but there's still the potential that there could end up being quite a few interesting games here. We'll just have to wait and see. So,
right.
All right. Any final thoughts on any of the stuff we covered, or anything else you want to cover before we close out for the night?
No, sir. I'm good to go.
All right. Well, recommendations and dissuasions. Start us off.
All right, so my recommendation, actually, let me make sure I have this correct. Okay, yeah, I did have it correct. So I'm actually going to double down on my recommendation from last week, or at least I'm pretty certain this was a recommendation last week, and that is to back up your data if you're going to do something very crucial. Um, I thought I did enough just by backing up the drive I thought was the problem, and turns out it was not the problem. And if I wasn't careful, I could have actually lost a lot of stuff that was important to me. Nothing that was life-threatening or anything like that, but stuff that would have been a pain to get back, like actually finding Citra copies of the Citra emulator, which are now like very hard to find now. But there was stuff that is gonna be hard to find. So I really recommend backing up everything if you're going to do something that's really sensitive to your computer. So it's also just good practice in general just to back up your stuff, so that way in case something ever happens, you won't lose it. I mean, you could just have a computer crash, and if they say, for example, you didn't save your work, you lost a lot of work in whatever you were doing. So back up your stuff, save constantly. That's all I gotta say.
Always good. Well, I am going to cheat and have multiple recommendations because I can. My first one is going to be make some pickled jalapenos. If you like pickled jalapenos, make them yourself. It's very easy to make. You don't need a whole lot. You can easily find a recipe online. Doesn't take long to make either. You can make it in basically less than an hour. And I mean, for them, you can let them sit longer to absorb the flavors a little better, and they're even better after they've sat longer. But it doesn't take long at all to do, and it's well worth it if you enjoy pickled jalapenos. But I'm also going to double down on my recommendation for Ghost of Tsushima, specifically adding to that, playing it even on the Steam Deck. Playing it on the Steam Deck, playing it wherever you can, even if your only option is to play it on the original PlayStation 4 and you're stuck with 30 frames per second, which is definitely the least ideal way to play it. But it is an amazing game, and you absolutely should play it wherever you can. If you have the option to play it on a powerful PC, do it on a powerful PC. If you have a PlayStation 5 but not a PC, play it on your PlayStation 5. If you have a Steam Deck, play it on your Steam Deck. ROG Ally, whatever, just play it. It's a great game. And lastly, with the recommendation, my cheating third recommendation, play Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, which, of course, I haven't played this yet, but the original version of Shin Megami Tensei 5 was already excellent, and all the reviews that I've seen so far, people have said this is the definitive version of the game. So I'm looking forward to it. I have it preloaded on my Steam Deck and my PC, and I have my Switch copy that I'll be picking up on Friday, and that's going to be a great one.
Very nice, very nice. So are you double dipping or no?
Yes, yeah, I double dipped on it. I decided early on to double dip, so I have both the Switch and Steam version.
Okay, nice.
But well worth it in my opinion, especially because I think that it's going to be a very good comparison to do. And I may even have to squeeze that one out a little bit early, but I may wait. Because I don't know who, like, I'm sure that there's going to be comparisons done, but I don't know how many people are necessarily going to do that OLED comparison specifically. And that's a game that's going to really shine with that OLED screen, so. Yep. All right, dissuasions.
Alright, my dissuasions are going to be sort of in the same vein as my recommendation. Actually, let me make sure I have this right, because I kind of have two micro dissuasions. So my first, I guess, sort of micro dissuasion is don't feel like you have to bite off more than you can chew, or rather, don't bite off more than you can chew if you're going to be doing something. Specifically, this is applying to Linux, but you could technically apply this to even Windows, and I guess for whatever reason Mac as well. Like, if you feel like you're doing something that is more difficult than you feel like it's a bother, don't do it. I probably should have just not have bothered trying to auto mount my drive and just manually mounted it every time I wanted to use it. It would not have been worth this whole hassle in the first place, but I kind of was stubborn. Secondly, and sort of adding on to that, if you have an option to bypass using a terminal, by all means go ahead and do it. If I had known that I could actually bypass the terminal and just done it through GUI, I would have done that in the first place. But at the time, I thought there was no way to do that, and so I went ahead and used the terminal, and that didn't turn out well. So definitely, if you can make things easier on yourself, go ahead and do it. Don't feel like you have to do it the try hard way, I guess, to put it lightly.
That's good. All right, well, I didn't write down a dissuasion, which is unfortunate because I thought of something while we were talking earlier, and I just decided not to write it out, thinking that, I'll remember it. And of course I didn't. So I don't have one off the top of my head, but I do want to say, don't let our... Let me try to phrase this properly. Don't always agree with everything that people say. Specifically, like when it comes to playing a game. If someone says you shouldn't play this game, but you're still interested in the game, or someone says don't play it on this platform, but you're still interested in playing it on the platform, even knowing what you know, just don't let us dissuade you from playing a game on a platform if that's your best option. I guess that's really a way to put it. Particularly because the fact that I retracted my dissuasion about playing Ghost of Tsushima on the Steam Deck. I was a bit down on it last week because I had a negative experience, but because the fact that it is that convenience factor, particularly when I don't have the option of just sitting at my computer and playing it, I'm really glad I decided to go back and play it there, and for the most part, my experience has been very positive. And I've even had, some of the tougher boss fights where I didn't have any issues playing it on the Steam Deck. There was one for trying to think of what I was earning. It might have been Gosaku's armor. It might have been something else. I can't remember. It was one of the fights that you do in order to earn a specific thing. Oh, it wasn't Gosaku's armor. It was actually to learn a technique. What's the name of the technique? It's one where you press L1 and R1, and then you do 3 strikes back to back. And if you have multiple enemies, then it will, and you kill each enemy with 1 strike, then it will do the 3 strikes on 3 different enemies. But if it's against 1 enemy, it does 3 strikes against 1 enemy. But I did that, beat it first try, no problems, on the Steam Deck, and I had no issues with that fight, even though it was one of the technically tougher fights, mostly because the Steam Deck has good enough performance to where I didn't have any issues with parrying or anything else. So anyway, that's what I got. All right, so where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@ I am Xeracon. Last video I actually what did I do last video? Oh yeah, last video I did was my Yaira issue number 1 unboxing. So that's from the Rippaverse comics. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can go ahead and check that out. I have, well, this video was pushed back due to circumstances, but next video is going to be discussing a, I guess, semi-popular site that was taken down recently, or rather, not taken down, but stuff has happened with the website. So I will be discussing that over this weekend, and I might even have something come out sometime early next weekend as well, but well, not next weekend, but next week as well. But so we'll see there.
All right. Well, you can find me on YouTube at FrozenGamer87, which is my main gaming channel. While I am going to be taking a break for a bit in terms of putting out my Steam Deck OLED versus Switch OLED or Vita OLED, etc. comparisons until July, I did put out a review I did for a product I received from a company called Unitech. It's not a paid review or anything else. It was just they sent me the product. They didn't charge me for it. It's a not a long review, about 11 minutes long, including all my extra commentary and shilling for additional channels. But it's a cool product. I think it's worth getting if you have enough physical games and if you play docked most of the time or a good amount of the time. So additionally, I have my cooking channel, Not Authentic But Delicious. That one I'm also taking a break from, but I did put out that smoked salmon recipe, and I do have plenty more in the works. Lots of good stuff. Definitely check it out. Of course, you can find us. You can contact us on, through Twitter at the Orange Box Pod. We're also on Facebook, and you can contact us through email, theorangeboxpodcast@gmail.com. That's basically it. Of course, oh yes, also with the Orange Box Podcast, if you're listening to the audio-only version, we do a video version every week as well. That is the source from which we do the audio anyway. So you can check out the video version on our YouTube channel. And if you are watching the video version, you can also, if you just want the audio, you can check it out on any major podcast platform: YouTube Music, Apple Music, Spotify, Deezer, iHeartRadio, etc., etc. Oh, Amazon Music, things like that. So lots of different places to find us. And one thing I do want to note really quickly, I'll just probably add this back in post-production. I remember what my dissuasion was, and that is, don't watch the movie Gentlemen Broncos. This is from the same creator as Napoleon Dynamite. Napoleon Dynamite was fantastic. Sasquatch Gang, which was another one that had some of the same creators, was in many ways even better than Napoleon Dynamite. Gentlemen Broncos was one that came out, I want to say like 2008-ish, somewhere around there. It was just weird. It wasn't nearly as good, so I'm going to dissuade you from watching that one. If you like it, by all means, like, I'm not going to think poorly of someone who likes it. My wife and I watched it last week, and it's like, I'm probably not going to watch it again. The only thing that was any good about it was the actor from Flight of the Conchords playing a role in there, and he was funny, but it was just weird. That's the only way I can describe it. Yeah, it was just weird, and not in a good way. So, anyway. Any final thoughts?
No, sir.
Alright, well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Xeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast, and until next time, to all my fellow dads, have a happy Father's Day. Orange Box Podcast, out.